I handed him divorce papers at his own birthday party while his mistress watched from across the room. And that was just the beginning of the most spectacular public downfall I've ever orchestrated. The champagne glass slipped from my fingers and shattered against our marble kitchen floor, but I barely heard it over the sound of my world imploding. There, on Marcus's laptop screen, was a text thread that made my stomach lurch. Not because he was cheating. I'd known about that for weeks. But because of what she'd written, can't wait until she agrees to the open marriage thing. Then we won't have to sneak around anymore, LOL. My name is Alina Rosewood, and I've spent 8 years being the perfect wife to a man who was playing chess while I thought we were playing house. The open marriage conversation had happened 3 days ago. Marcus had come home from his weekly poker night, which I now realized was code for screwing my coworker, with this sudden philosophical awakening about the constraints of monogamy. He'd paced around our living room, gesticulating wildly about how we were limiting our potential for growth, and how mature couples explore beyond traditional boundaries. I'd sat there on our cream-colored sofa, the one we'd picked out together during our second year of marriage, watching this man I'd loved transform into a stranger. His green eyes, the ones that used to look at me like I hung the moon, were distant, calculating. "Think about it, Elle," he'd said, using the nickname that once made me melt. "We're only 32. Don't you want to experience everything life has to offer?" The thing is, I didn't. I wanted him. I wanted our Saturday morning pancakes and terrible movie marathons. I wanted the life we'd built in our colonial-style house in Riverside Heights, with its wraparound porch and the garden I'd spent 3 years perfecting. But looking at those text messages now, I understood the game. Marcus wanted permission to legitimize what he was already doing. And his affair partner, Jessica Chen, the marketing coordinator at his architecture firm, was coaching him through it. The messages went back months. Screenshots of articles about polyamory, jokes about my vanilla nature, plans for how to ease me into it so I wouldn't freak out and lawyer up. That last phrase made something cold and sharp settle in my chest. I scrolled further back, my hands shaking. There were photos, intimate ones, hotel receipts, restaurant reservations for 2 while I was visiting my mother in Tampa. A whole shadow life I'd been funding through our joint account without even knowing it. But the message that broke something fundamental inside me was from 2 weeks ago. "She's so trusting, it's almost pathetic. This is going to be easier than we thought." Almost pathetic. 8 years of marriage. 8 years of supporting his career, hosting his colleagues, playing the dutiful wife at company events. 8 years of turning down promotions that would require travel because he said he needed me home. 8 years of my life. And I was almost pathetic. I heard his key in the front door and quickly closed the laptop. My reflection in the black screen showed a woman I barely recognized, hollow-eyed, pale, with my dark hair falling in limp waves around my face. I looked exactly like what I was, a fool who just discovered she'd been living a lie. "Hey, babe!" Marcus called out, his voice artificially cheerful. "How was your day?" I walked into the foyer, stepping carefully over the broken champagne glass I'd abandoned. He was hanging up his navy blazer, the one I'd bought him for his last promotion. His brown hair was perfectly styled, not a strand out of place despite it being nearly 7 p.m. He'd always been meticulous about his appearance, but now I wondered who he was really dressing for. "Fine," I managed. "Yours?" "Oh, you know, same old." He loosened his tie, red silk with tiny gold diamonds. I'd given it to him for our anniversary last year. Actually, I've been thinking more about our conversation the other day. Here it comes. And I kept my voice level, a skill I'd perfected during 8 years of hiding my emotions to keep him comfortable. He moved closer, putting his hands on my shoulders. His cologne, expensive, something I'd never smelled on him before last month, made my stomach turn. I think we should do it. The open relationship thing. His eyes searched my face, looking for cracks in my composure. I've done some research, and it could really strengthen our bond, knowing we're choosing each other every day instead of just defaulting to it. The audacity was breathtaking. He was actually trying to sell me on funding his affair with my emotional labor. "Research," I repeated slowly. Yeah, there are tons of successful couples who've tried it. We could set boundaries, you know? Maybe start with just dating, see how it feels. He was warming to his topic now, probably practicing the speech he'd rehearsed with Jessica. We're both attractive, successful people. Why shouldn't we explore what else is out there? Because I don't want anyone else, I thought. Because I chose you every single day for 8 years and thought you were choosing me too. But what I said was, I need to think about it. His face fell slightly. This wasn't the script he'd prepared for. Think about it. Elle, this could be amazing for us. We could rediscover ourselves, bring new energy into our relationship. Marcus. I stepped back, breaking his grip on my shoulders. This is a big decision. I need time to process. Of course. But I could see the frustration building behind his eyes. He'd expected me to either immediately say yes or have a dramatic breakdown that would give him grounds to comfort me into submission. My calm request for time wasn't in his playbook. That night, I lay awake, listening to him sleep, planning, because here's what Marcus didn't know about his almost pathetic wife. I hadn't spent 8 years just playing house. I'd spent them building a career in digital marketing that I'd deliberately kept low profile to avoid threatening his ego. I had my own money, my own connections, and my own skills. And I just discovered I had my own rage. By morning, I'd made my decision. I was going to give Marcus exactly what he'd asked for, an open marriage. But I was going to play the game better than he'd ever imagined possible. I found him in the kitchen, making coffee in the expensive machine I'd bought him last Christmas. He looked up hopefully when I entered. I've thought about it, I said, accepting the mug he offered. Let's do it. His smile was so genuine, so relieved that for a moment I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Really, Elle? That's amazing. I think this is going to be so good for us. I have some conditions. I continued, watching his face carefully. Of course, whatever you need to feel comfortable. First, we're completely honest with each other. No secrets, no sneaking around. If either of us is seeing someone, the other person knows. He nodded eagerly. Absolutely. Transparency is key. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so devastating. Second, we prioritize our marriage. Whatever happens outside stays outside. We don't bring other people into our home. That makes total sense. And third, I paused, letting the moment stretch. We both actually participate. This isn't just about one of us exploring while the other waits at home. Something flickered across his face. Surprise. Maybe even concern. But he recovered quickly. Of course. That's the whole point, right? Both of us experiencing new things. That afternoon, while Marcus was at work, or with Jessica, I no longer cared to distinguish, I created dating profiles on 3 different apps. I used recent photos, ones that showed off the results of my twice-weekly yoga classes and the personal trainer I'd been seeing since January. I'd lost 15 pounds since New Year's, initially to surprise Marcus, but now I was grateful for different reasons. The responses were immediate and overwhelming. Dozens of matches within the first hour. Messages from men who seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me, not just looking for someone to validate their midlife crisis. By the time Marcus came home that evening, I had 3 dates lined up for the week. That was fast, he said when I told him, and I caught a note of something in his voice. Surprise? Dismay? I guess I'm more desirable than we thought, I replied sweetly. He forced a laugh. I guess so. Anyone interesting? A few possibilities. What about you? Any luck? The lie came so easily to him. Still setting up my profile, you know me. I'm picky. Of course he was picky. He'd already picked Jessica months ago. My first date was with Daniel Martinez, a divorced father of 2 who owned a successful restaurant downtown. We met for coffee on Tuesday afternoon, and I was struck by how easy it was to talk to someone who actually listened to my answers instead of waiting for his turn to speak. Your husband is okay with this? Daniel asked during our second cup. It was his idea, I said, which was technically true. Brave man. If I had someone like you, I'd want to keep you all to myself. The compliment hit differently than Marcus's automatic, you look nice comments. Daniel meant it. I could see it in his dark eyes, in the way he leaned forward when I spoke, in how he asked follow-up questions about my work instead of changing the subject to his own achievements. When he walked me to my car, he asked if he could see me again. I said yes before I could talk myself out of it. That night, Marcus asked about my date with studied casualness. It was nice, I said. He's taking me to dinner Friday. Dinner? Marcus looked up from his laptop. The same laptop where he'd been sexting his coworker for months. That's great, Elle. I'm happy for you. But he didn't look happy. He looked like someone who'd just realized his chess piece wasn't where he'd left it on the board. Friday's dinner with Daniel was revelation. We went to a small Italian place in the Arts District. Nothing fancy, but he'd chosen it because he remembered I'd mentioned loving authentic carbonara during our coffee date. The conversation flowed like wine, covering everything from travel dreams to favorite books to childhood memories. "You're not what I expected," Daniel said over dessert. "What did you expect? Someone looking for validation, maybe. Or trying to prove something to her husband. But you're just present. Like you're actually interested in getting to know me, not using me for some agenda." If only he knew. But the strange thing was, he wasn't wrong. Somewhere between the antipasto and the tiramisu, I'd stopped thinking about Marcus entirely. I was just enjoying myself, really, genuinely enjoying myself, for the first time in months. When Daniel kissed me goodnight in the parking lot, it felt like coming alive after a long sleep. I came home to find Marcus waiting up, pretending to read in the living room. "How was dinner?" he asked, closing his book, a thriller I'd recommended months ago that he'd never touched. "Wonderful," I said, and meant it. He's taking me away for the weekend next month. Marcus's book slipped from his hands. Away? Like overnight? A bed and breakfast in Sonoma. Very romantic. I studied his face, watching the calculation happen behind his eyes. This wasn't the script. In his fantasy, I was supposed to go on a few awkward dates that would make me appreciate him more, while he got to legitimize his affair. That's moving pretty fast, don't you think? Is it? How fast did things move with Jessica? The color drained from his face. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "I don't know what you mean," he said finally. I smiled. The same smile I'd worn to countless company parties and dinner parties and anniversary celebrations. The smile of a woman who knew how to keep secrets. "Of course you don't," I said. "I'm going to bed. Don't wait up." The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Marcus's phone. He was already gone. Early meeting, according to the note on his pillow. But his panic was palpable even in written form. "We need to talk tonight. Important." I deleted the note and made myself a leisurely breakfast. French press coffee, eggs Benedict, fresh strawberries. The kind of meal I used to make for us on Sundays before he started having emergency projects that kept him away from home. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "Still thinking about last night. You're incredible." Another buzz. "Marcus, can we meet for lunch? I think we should discuss some boundaries." I responded to Daniel first. "Thinking about you too. Can't wait for next weekend." To Marcus. "Can't do lunch. Busy day. We'll talk tonight." The power shift was subtle but unmistakable. For the first time in our marriage, Marcus was the one waiting on my schedule. I spent the day at my laptop working on a campaign for a tech startup client. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was building a brand strategy for a company disrupting traditional industries while simultaneously disrupting my own traditional marriage. The client loved my concepts. Aggressive, innovative, unafraid to challenge the status quo. "This is exactly the energy we want," the CEO said during our video call. "You really understand the importance of controlling the narrative." If only she knew how much practice I was getting. Marcus came home at exactly 6 p.m., carrying flowers from the expensive florist downtown. Pink roses, my supposed favorite, though I'd told him a dozen times I preferred white peonies. Another small proof that he'd stopped seeing me years ago. "We need to set some ground rules," he said without preamble, setting the flowers on the counter. I think we jumped into this too fast. I looked up from my laptop, where I was reviewing Daniel's messages. He'd sent photos from his restaurant's new menu testing, action shots of him cooking, laughing with his staff, a man who was passionate about creating something meaningful. "Ground rules?" I asked. I thought transparency was key. It is, but I think we need to be more thoughtful about this. Maybe we should limit it to casual dating. Nothing serious. Define serious. Marcus ran his hands through his hair, a nervous tell I'd learned to read years ago. I don't know. Sleepovers, trips, meeting each other's friends. That kind of thing. I closed my laptop and gave him my full attention. You mean the kind of thing you've been doing with Jessica for months? This time, he didn't even try to deny it. His shoulders sagged, and for a moment he looked older than his 32 years. How long have you known? Long enough. I stood up, moving to the kitchen island that had become an invisible barrier between us. The question is, how long were you going to keep lying about it? Elle, I never meant for it to happen. It started as friendship and then... Stop. The word came out sharper than I intended. Don't insult my intelligence with the "it just happened" story. I saw the messages, Marcus. All of them. The planning, the jokes about my vanilla nature, the hotel receipts. His face went white. You went through my phone? I went through our laptop, the one I pay for with our joint account, the same account you've been using to fund your affair. It's not an affair if we agreed to an open marriage. We agreed to it 3 days ago. You've been screwing her since February. The number surprised him. I could see him doing the math, realizing I knew exactly how long he'd been betraying me. February 14th, to be exact. Very romantic, starting an affair on Valentine's Day while your wife was at her mother's funeral. That wasn't entirely accurate. Mom's funeral had been in January, but I wanted to see if he'd correct me, if there was any part of him that remembered where I'd actually been that weekend. He didn't correct me. He didn't remember. Elle, please. I know I handled this wrong, but I do love you. I want to make this work. Which part? The marriage or the open relationship? Both. All of it. I think we can figure this out. I studied his face, looking for any trace of the man I'd fallen in love with in college. The one who used to bring me coffee during late-night study sessions, who'd held my hand during my father's cancer treatments, who'd cried when I'd miscarried 3 years ago and promised we'd face everything together. That man was gone. Maybe he'd never existed. Okay, I said finally. Let's figure it out. Relief flooded his features. Really? Really. But we're doing this my way now. Complete honesty, remember? He nodded eagerly. Jessica knows about me, obviously. When do I get to meet her? The question caught him off guard. Meet her? That might be awkward. Why? If we're all adults choosing this lifestyle, shouldn't we be able to have dinner together? Double date with me and Daniel? Daniel? My boyfriend. The word felt strange on my tongue, but I liked how it sounded, how it made Marcus flinch. Your boyfriend? Elle, it's been 1 week. Actually, it's been 2 dates, the same number you and Jessica had before you slept together, according to your messages. I was lying. Their messages showed they'd been flirting for weeks before their first official date, but Marcus was too rattled to call me on it. This is moving too fast, he said. I think we should pump the brakes. You mean you should pump the brakes? I should slow down while you continue your 5-month relationship with Jessica. It's not a relationship, it's complicated. It's about to get more complicated. I picked up my phone and showed him my screen. I'm posting about our open marriage on my Instagram tonight. You know, celebrating our journey toward authentic living. The horror on his face was almost comical. You can't do that. Why not? You said transparency was key. And I have quite a few followers thanks to my marketing work. I think they'll find our story inspiring. Marcus's Instagram was private, with maybe 200 followers. Mine had grown to over 3,000 through my professional network and lifestyle content. His colleagues followed me. His boss followed me. His parents followed me. Elle, please, think about what that would do to my career. I am thinking about it. I started typing on my phone. Let's see. Exciting news. Marcus and I have decided to explore an open marriage. He's already found an amazing connection with his coworker Jessica from Morrison and Associates Architecture. I'm so proud of how thoughtfully he's approached this journey toward authenticity. Stop. Don't post that. Why? I thought you were proud of your choices. Jessica certainly seems proud. She posted a photo of the hotel room you two shared last week. Very artistic angle on the champagne glasses. That was another lie. Jessica's Instagram was locked down tight. But Marcus didn't know that. You're being vindictive. I'm being transparent. Isn't that what you wanted? We stared at each other across the kitchen island. The space between us charged with 8 years of unspoken resentments and recent betrayals. He looked like a man who just realized he'd set off a bomb in his own house. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "I want what you promised me 8 years ago. A partner who chooses me every day. A man who tells me the truth. Someone who thinks I'm worth more than almost pathetic." He winced at his own words thrown back at him. "But since I can't have that," I continued, "I'll settle for honesty about what this actually is." "Which is?" "You want to have your cake and eat it too. You want the security and social status of a marriage, plus the excitement of an affair, with none of the consequences. You thought I'd be too scared or too dependent to leave, so you could have everything. That's not. Isn't it? You've been lying to me for months, Marcus, using our money to wine and dine another woman, making me look like a fool to your colleagues who probably all know about Jessica, planning to manipulate me into giving you permission for something you were already doing. I never wanted to hurt you. You just didn't want to inconvenience yourself by considering my feelings." He had no answer for that. "So here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my system. "We're going to have the open marriage you wanted, but we're doing it honestly this time. No sneaking around, no lies, no secret phone calls. Okay? You're going to tell Jessica that I know everything. You're going to explain that we're trying to make this work as mature adults. Okay. And you're going to be fine with me dating Daniel. Seriously dating him. Because if you can handle a 5-month affair, you can handle me having a real relationship." Marcus opened his mouth to protest, then closed it again. "One more thing," I added. "We're going to couples therapy. If we're really trying to make this work, we need professional help navigating it. Couples therapy? For an open marriage? For an open marriage that started with months of lies and betrayal. Yes." That night, I called my sister Rachel in Portland. She'd never liked Marcus, always said there was something calculating about his charm. "You're doing what?" She asked when I explained the situation. Exactly what he asked for, an open marriage. "Elle, you hate this idea. You've always been a one-person kind of woman. Maybe I was, but maybe that woman was taken advantage of. This is going to end badly." "For who?" Rachel was quiet for a long moment. "Promise me you know what you're doing." "I promise I know exactly what I'm doing." After we hung up, I found Marcus in his office, staring at his phone. "Did you call her?" I asked. He looked up, startled. "Call who?" "Jessica, to explain our new arrangement." "Not yet. I wanted to think about how to phrase it." "Here's a suggestion. Hi, Jessica. My wife knows about us and wants to meet you. She's also dating someone else now, so we're all going to be mature adults about this." "It's not that simple." "It is that simple. Unless there's something you haven't told me about your relationship with her." The pause was telling. "Marcus, what haven't you told me?" "It's nothing major. It's just, she might not have known I was married." The laugh that escaped me was sharp and bitter. "You've been having an affair with someone who doesn't know you're married?" "I wear my ring to work. She had to know. Wearing a ring and actively discussing your wife are two different things. I mentioned you." "As what? Your roommate?" Another telling pause. "Oh my God, you told her we were separated." "I said we were having problems, that we were basically living separate lives. While I was cooking your dinner every night and doing your laundry and hosting your work friends for poker games." "Elle, what else, Marcus? What other lies do I need to know about?" He rubbed his face with both hands. "I might have implied that we were getting divorced." "Might have implied?" "I told her we were filing papers after the holidays." I felt something cold and final settle in my chest. This wasn't just an affair. This was a complete alternate reality he'd constructed, one where I was already erased from his life. She thinks she's dating a single man. Technically separated. Based on lies. Based on what I thought was going to happen. "You thought you were going to divorce me?" I thought maybe if I had some space to figure things out, we could decide what was best for both of us. By space, you mean screwing your coworker while I paid the bills and played housewife. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen, Marcus? Walk me through your plan. He looked anywhere but at me. I thought maybe we'd grow apart naturally, that you'd realize we weren't happy anymore. I was happy. I've been happy for 8 years. You've been content. There's a difference. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. He decided I was content, not happy, not fulfilled, just content, and used that to justify blowing up our life. And Jessica, is she happy or just content? She's different from you. How? She's more spontaneous, more adventurous. She doesn't need as much stability. Translation, she was younger, more exciting, and hadn't spent 8 years watching him leave dirty dishes in the sink. Well, I said, standing up, this should be an interesting conversation when you tell her you're actually married to someone who's more stable and less adventurous. You don't understand. Jessica isn't like other women. She's independent, career-focused. She doesn't want the traditional relationship thing. Then she should be thrilled to meet your wife. The look on his face suggested Jessica would be anything but thrilled. That night, I lay in our bed, where he'd come home to me after being with her, and made a decision. Marcus wanted an open marriage. He was going to get exactly what he'd asked for, but he was going to discover that games have rules, and he'd just taught me how to play. The text came at 7:23 a.m. while Marcus was in the shower. We need to talk. Now. I recognized the number from months of scrolling through Marcus's messages. Jessica Chen, finally ready to have a conversation. Can't wait to meet you too, I texted back. Coffee at 10? Blend Cafe on 5th Street. The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times before she responded. Fine. Marcus emerged from the bathroom in a cloud of steam and expensive aftershave, completely unaware that his two worlds were about to collide. Morning, beautiful, he said, kissing my cheek with the same casual affection he'd shown for months while betraying me. Sleep well? Like a baby. I held up my phone. I'm meeting Jessica for coffee this morning. He stopped mid-stride, his tie half knotted around his neck. What? She texted. Wants to meet. I thought it was very mature of her. I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? I thought transparency was key to making this work. I could practically see the wheels turning in his head, trying to calculate how much damage control he'd need to do. What did you tell her about me? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Just that we were working things out. And by working things out, you mean? That we decided to try an open relationship. Another lie, but I'd expected that. Perfect. Then she should be excited to meet the wife who's making her relationship possible. Marcus's face had gone ashen. Maybe I should come with you. Why? Don't you trust us to have a civilized conversation? It's not that. It's just what, Marcus? He couldn't finish the sentence because there was no good way to explain that he'd been lying to both of us for months. Blend Cafe was crowded at 10 a.m., full of freelancers and remote workers claiming tables for the day. I arrived early and chose a spot near the window where I could watch Jessica approach. I wanted to see her face when she realized exactly who she was meeting. She was prettier than her Instagram photos suggested, petite and polished, with glossy black hair and the kind of effortless style that came from having disposable income and no domestic responsibilities. She wore a cream-colored blazer over dark jeans, looking like she'd stepped out of one of those young professional stock photos. I waved her over, watching recognition dawn on her features. She'd probably imagined Marcus's wife as frumpy and neglectful, someone who'd let herself go and driven her husband into another woman's arms. Instead, she found me. 5'7", well-dressed and smiling like we were old friends meeting for a catch-up. Elena? She asked, though her tone suggested she was hoping I'd say no. Jessica! So wonderful to finally meet you. I stood and hugged her, feeling her entire body tense. I've heard so much about you. She sat down stiffly, clutching her purse like a shield. This is unexpected. I know Marcus has been nervous about us meeting, but I think it's important. If we're all going to be part of each other's lives, we should at least be friends, don't you think? Part of each other's lives? Her voice was strained. I tilted my head, feigning confusion. Well, yes. I mean, you and Marcus have been together for months now, and I'm seeing someone wonderful too. It only makes sense that we'd all get to know each other. Together for months? The question hung in the air between us. I could see the exact moment she realized how much Marcus had lied to her. Since February, right? Valentine's Day was when you first... Well, when things became physical between you two. Jessica's face went through several expressions: confusion, realization, then something that looked like nausea. He told me you were separated, she said quietly. Separated? No, we've been living together this whole time. In fact, he just convinced me to try an open marriage last week. It was his idea, actually. Said it would strengthen our bond. I watched her world crumble in real time. Her hands shook as she reached for her coffee cup. He said you were filing for divorce. Divorce? Goodness, no. We're working on our marriage. That's why we decided to explore this together. I leaned forward conspiratorially. To be honest, I was hesitant at first, but Marcus was so passionate about the idea, and seeing how happy you make him, well, it convinced me. Happy I make him? She wasn't asking. Oh, yes, he talks about you constantly. Your ambition, your independence. He says you're nothing like me, which I take as a compliment. I tend to be more traditional, more focused on home and stability, but you're this exciting career woman who challenges him intellectually. Each word was carefully chosen to highlight exactly how Marcus had been playing us against each other. The ambitious career woman versus the domestic housewife. The exciting mistress versus the boring wife. I need to ask you something, Jessica said, her voice tight, and I need you to be honest with me. Of course. Does Marcus wear his wedding ring when he's with you? The question surprised me with its specificity. Always. Why? He told me he'd stopped wearing it months ago, said it felt dishonest to wear a ring for a marriage that was over. Another lie to add to the pile. I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo from the previous weekend. Marcus at his company's golf tournament, clearly wearing his ring while shaking hands with his boss. This was taken Saturday. He's never taken it off, as far as I know. Jessica stared at the photo, then at me. I feel like an idiot. You're not an idiot. You're the victim of a very elaborate lie. Why are you being so nice to me? I've been sleeping with your husband. Because you didn't know he was really my husband, and because getting angry at you won't fix what Marcus did to both of us. She was quiet for a long moment, processing. What do you want from me? Honestly, I want to know what he told you about our marriage, what lies he used to justify this. Jessica looked out the window, watching people hurry past on the sidewalk. Normal people living honest lives. He said you'd grown apart, that you were more like roommates than spouses. He said you were both too scared to admit the marriage was over, so you were just going through the motions. What else? That you'd become boring, set in your routines, that you never wanted to try new things or go anywhere or do anything spontaneous. It was like looking at myself through a funhouse mirror. All the things Marcus saw as flaws twisted into reasons I deserved to be betrayed. He said you were content with a small life, but he needed more. And you believed that was grounds for an affair rather than a conversation or marriage counseling? I believed we were single. The words came out sharper than she'd intended. If I'd known he was married, really married, living with you, sharing a life with you, I never would have gone near him. I believed her. The horror on her face was too genuine to fake. What happens now? She asked. Now you decide what kind of person you want to be. Do you want to be the other woman in a marriage based on lies? Or do you want to walk away from a man who's been manipulating both of us? And if I walk away, then you'll have learned something valuable about Marcus's character and maybe saved yourself from discovering worse things down the road. Worse things? I thought about the joint credit card he'd been using for their dates, the business trips that might not have been business trips, the way he'd escalated from emotional affair to physical affair to elaborate deception so smoothly. Men who lie this easily don't usually limit themselves to one lie, I said. Jessica nodded slowly. I need to think. Of course, but Jessica? I reached across the table and touched her hand. Whatever you decide, don't let him make you feel like this is your fault. You trusted someone who lied to you. That's not a character flaw. That's human. She squeezed my hand briefly before pulling away. Thank you for not hating me. I save my hate for people who deserve it. After Jessica left, I sat in the cafe for another hour, watching the morning crowd thin out. My phone buzzed constantly. Texts from Marcus asking how the meeting went, where I was when I'd be home. I ignored them all. Instead, I called Daniel. Hey, beautiful, He answered on the second ring. Isn't this a nice surprise? Are you free for lunch? I could use some good company. Always free for you. Everything okay? Just navigating some marriage complications. I'll tell you about it over food. We met at his restaurant, Rosemary and Thyme, a cozy Mediterranean place he'd opened 3 years ago. He seated me at a corner table and brought over a plate of his signature spanakopita. You look like you've been through a war, he said, settling into the chair across from me. I feel like it. I just had coffee with my husband's girlfriend. Daniel raised an eyebrow. That's either very mature or very masochistic. Maybe both. I told him about the meeting, about Marcus's lies, about the elaborate fiction he'd constructed to justify his behavior. So he's been lying to both of you. For months. She thought he was separated and filing for divorce, and I thought we had a strong marriage that just needed some excitement. What are you going to do? It was the question I'd been avoiding all morning. I don't know. Part of me wants to expose everything. Tell his boss, his parents, everyone who thinks he's this upstanding guy. But that feels vindictive, destructive. Not just to him, but to me. I'd become the bitter ex-wife who aired her dirty laundry publicly. Daniel reached across the table and took my hand. You know what I think? What? I think you're giving him too much credit. You're worried about protecting his reputation when he didn't think twice about humiliating you. But, Elena, he made you unknowingly complicit in his affair. He used your money, your home, your trust to fund a relationship with another woman. That's not just betrayal. That's financial and emotional abuse. The words hit me like cold water. I'd been so focused on the affair aspect that I hadn't fully processed the deeper violation. You're right. And now he's trying to manipulate you into accepting it by framing it as some kind of mutual growth experience, while continuing to lie to Jessica about our situation. Exactly. This man has no intention of being honest with anyone. He just wants to control the narrative so he gets what he wants without consequences. I thought about Marcus at home, probably panicking about what Jessica and I had discussed, trying to figure out which lies to maintain and which ones to abandon. I'm not going to let him control the narrative anymore, I said. Daniel smiled. What did you have in mind? That afternoon, I drove to Morrison & Associates Architecture. I'd been there dozens of times for company events, knew the layout, knew which desk was Jessica's. More importantly, I knew which office belonged to Richard Morrison, the senior partner who'd given Marcus his last 2 promotions. The receptionist recognized me. Mrs. Rosewood, here to see Marcus? Actually, I was hoping to speak with Mr. Morrison. Is he available? Let me check. She picked up her phone. Mr. Morrison? Alina Rosewood is here to see you. Yes, Marcus's wife. Okay, I'll send her back. Richard Morrison was a distinguished man in his 60s who'd always been kind to me at company functions. His office was corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Elena, what a pleasant surprise. Please, sit down. Can I offer you coffee? No, thank you, Mr. Morrison. I won't take much of your time. Nonsense. You're always welcome here. How's Marcus? He seemed a bit distracted this week. That's actually what I wanted to discuss with you. I watched his expression shift from friendly to cautious. I'm afraid Marcus has been going through some personal issues that may be affecting his work performance. I thought you should hear about it from me directly. Personal issues? He's been having an affair with one of your employees, Jessica Chen in marketing. The words hung in the air between us. Morrison's face went through several expressions before settling on professional concern. That's a serious allegation, Elena. It's not an allegation. It's been going on since February. Hotel receipts, text messages, the whole thing. I pulled out my phone and showed him screenshots I'd taken of Marcus's messages. I discovered it last week. Morrison studied the phone screen, his frown deepening. These are from Marcus's personal phone? From our shared laptop. He forgot to log out of his iCloud account. Elena, I'm not sure this is something I should. Mr. Morrison, I'm not here to cause trouble for your company, but I thought you should know that 2 of your employees have been conducting a relationship that involves lying to clients and colleagues about their availability. That got his attention. Office affairs were one thing, but anything that could affect client relationships was a business matter. What do you mean? Marcus has been telling Jessica, and presumably others, that we're separated and filing for divorce. Meanwhile, he's been using me as his +1 for client events and company functions. Your clients think he's a stable family man, but your employees know he's dating a coworker. That's concerning from a professional standpoint. I'm also concerned about the financial implications. Marcus has been using company travel and entertainment expenses for personal purposes. Those hotel receipts I mentioned, some of them were charged to the Morrison and Associates account. Morrison's expression hardened. Company expense fraud was serious business. Do you have documentation of that? I handed him a folder I'd prepared that morning. Bank statements, credit card bills, hotel receipts, all highlighting charges that coincided with Marcus's affair timeline. I've highlighted the questionable expenses. You'll notice they don't correspond to any client meetings or business travel in his calendar. Morrison flipped through the documents, his jaw tightening with each page. Elena, I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. This is obviously a difficult situation for you personally. It is, but I believe in doing the right thing, even when it's hard. What outcome are you hoping for here? It was a fair question. I want Marcus to face appropriate consequences for his actions. I want Jessica to understand the full scope of what she's been involved in, and I want your company to maintain its reputation for integrity. Those are reasonable expectations. I'm not asking you to fire anyone. I'm just asking you to investigate and handle it appropriately. Morrison nodded. I'll need to discuss this with HR and the other partners. There will likely be an investigation. I understand. Elena, I'm sorry this happened to you. Marcus is lucky to have someone so principled looking out for his best interests, even under these circumstances. I almost laughed at that. Marcus's best interests were the last thing on my mind. When I got home, Marcus was waiting in the kitchen with takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant. Damage control. How did it go with Jessica? He asked, his voice carefully neutral. Interesting conversation. She's a lovely woman. That's good? She was surprised to learn we're still married and living together. Marcus went very still. What did you tell her? The truth. That you convinced me to try an open marriage last week, and that you've been talking about her for months. Elena, she was also surprised to learn that you still wear your wedding ring. I can explain. Can you? Because I'm having trouble understanding why you told her we were separated and filing for divorce while asking me to experiment with polyamory. Marcus set down the takeout bags with shaking hands. It's complicated. It's really not. You wanted to have an affair without the guilt, so you lied to both of us to make it seem justified. That's not how it happened. Then how did it happen, Marcus? Walk me through your thought process. He ran both hands through his hair. A gesture I now realized meant he was calculating which lies might still work. I never meant to hurt anyone. But you did hurt people. You hurt me by lying about Jessica. You hurt Jessica by lying about our marriage. You hurt your employer by using company resources for personal purposes. Company resources? The hotel receipts, Marcus. Some of them were charged to your corporate card. The color drained from his face. How do you know about that? Because I pay attention. Something you might want to try. Elena, what did you do? I had a conversation with Richard Morrison this afternoon. Marcus sat down heavily in one of our kitchen chairs. You went to my boss? I went to a man I respect and told him the truth about what's been happening in his company. You're trying to get me fired. I'm trying to make sure there are consequences for your actions, something that should have happened months ago. This will ruin my career. Your choices ruined your career. I'm just making sure people know what those choices were. Marcus stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Who are you? This isn't like you. You're right. The old me would have blamed herself. Would have wondered what she did wrong, how she could fix it, how she could be better. I met his eyes steadily. But the old me didn't know she was married to a man who thought she was almost pathetic. I never said. You texted it to Jessica, along with jokes about my vanilla nature and plans for how to manipulate me into accepting your affair. We were just talking. You were strategizing. You and your girlfriend were planning how to gaslight your wife into accepting her own humiliation. Marcus opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. There was no defense for what I'd seen in those messages. "What happens now?" he asked finally. "Now you face the consequences of your choices. Morrison is conducting an investigation. Jessica knows the truth about our marriage, and I'm done pretending this is something we can work through. You want a divorce. I want you to leave, tonight. Alina, this is my house too. This is the house I've been maintaining while you used our money to wine and dine another woman. The house where I cooked your dinner every night while you texted her about how boring I was. The house where I did your laundry and paid your bills while you planned your exit strategy. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. Stay with Jessica. Get a hotel. Figure it out. We need to talk about this rationally." Rationally? Marcus, you spent 5 months lying to me and your girlfriend, using company resources to fund an affair and manipulating both of us to avoid consequences. There's nothing rational about any of this. He was quiet for a long moment, just staring at his hands. "I know I messed up," he said finally, "but I do love you. I always have." "No, you don't. You love the idea of me, the wife who asks no questions, makes no demands, and absorbs all your damage without complaint. But that woman is gone." "So that's it? 8 years of marriage over?" 8 years of marriage was over the moment you decided Jessica was worth more than I was. I'm just the last one to find out. That evening, I watched Marcus pack 2 suitcases and load them into his BMW. He moved slowly, like he was waiting for me to change my mind, to beg him to stay and work things out. I didn't. "I'll come back for the rest of my things this weekend," he said, standing in our doorway. "I'll make sure I'm not here." "Elena, I really am sorry." "I know you are. You're sorry you got caught." After his car disappeared down our tree-lined street, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on our back patio. The garden I'd spent 3 years perfecting was in full bloom. Roses and peonies and jasmine creating a riot of color and fragrance. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "Heard through the grapevine that you had an eventful day. You okay?" "Better than okay," I typed back. "Free for dinner tomorrow?" "Always. Your place or mine?" I looked around the patio, at the house that was now truly mine, at the garden that represented 3 years of patient cultivation. "Mine," I responded. "I want to cook for you." For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. 3 weeks later, I was arranging white peonies in my kitchen when the doorbell rang. Through the front window, I could see Jessica Chen standing on my porch, holding what looked like a manila envelope. I'd heard through the grapevine that she'd resigned from Morrison and Associates the day after their investigation began. Marcus, meanwhile, had been encouraged to seek opportunities elsewhere, corporate speak for fired without cause to avoid a scandal. "Jessica," I said, opening the door, "this is unexpected. I hope you don't mind me stopping by. I tried calling, but I've been screening my calls. Too many reporters wanting to know about the open marriage gone wrong story." She winced. "I'm sorry about that." "Are you? Because last I heard, you were telling people I was the vindictive wife who destroyed your relationship." Jessica looked down at her hands. I was angry and embarrassed and looking for someone to blame who wasn't me. "And now? Now I know better." She held up the envelope. "Can I come in? There's something you need to see." I led her to the living room, the same room where Marcus had pitched me his open marriage fantasy a month ago. She sat on the edge of the sofa, clutching the envelope like a lifeline. "I found these in Marcus's apartment," she said. We were living together. After he left here." "Living together?" "He said it was temporary, that he needed time to figure things out before you two worked out the divorce details." Another lie. I wasn't surprised anymore. "What's in the envelope, Jessica?" She opened it and pulled out a stack of photographs. Printed emails, bank statements, credit card bills. "I wasn't the first," she said quietly. I took the documents, scanning them quickly. Hotel receipts dating back 2 years. Emails with different women. Photos that made my stomach turn. "How many?" I asked. "At least 3 that I can prove. Maybe more." The room felt like it was spinning. 8 years of marriage, and I'd been the only one who was faithful. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you were right. About everything. He's not a man who made one mistake. He's a man who's been living a double life for years." I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or ulterior motives. All I saw was exhaustion and genuine regret. What happened between you two? He moved in, and I got to see who he really was. How he talked about you when he thought I was on his side. How he blamed you for everything. His unhappiness, his choices, even his affair with me. What did he say? That you were controlling. That you'd manipulated him into staying married by threatening to take everything in a divorce. That you were frigid and boring and had trapped him in a sexless marriage. Each word was a small knife, but they didn't hurt the way they would have a month ago. Now, they just sounded pathetic. He also said I was different from his other girlfriends because I was wife material. Other girlfriends. Plural. He talked about them like they were a hobby. Jessica pulled out her phone and showed me a text thread. Marcus to her. Alina was always too needy. Sarah was too dramatic. Kim was too ambitious. But you're perfect. You understand what men actually want. Sarah and Kim? Two of the women in these photos. I did some digging after I found them. She handed me printouts of social media profiles. Sarah Martinez, a real estate agent Marcus had dated 18 months ago. Kim Thompson, a nurse he'd met at a conference last year. They both thought he was separated, Jessica continued. He used the same story every time. Unhappy marriage, planning to leave, just needed to find the right moment. But he never actually left, because he had the best of both worlds. A stable home life with you, excitement with whoever caught his fancy, and no real consequences. I set the documents aside and looked at Jessica. Really looked at her. She'd lost weight, had dark circles under her eyes, looked like someone who hadn't been sleeping. What made you finally see it? He asked me to loan him money. For what? Lawyer fees. He said you were being vindictive about the divorce, that you'd hired some shark attorney who was going to take him for everything. I haven't hired any attorney. I know. When I asked to see the papers you'd supposedly filed, he got angry, said I was being paranoid and controlling just like you. So you started investigating. I went to the courthouse. No divorce filing. Then I started looking through his things. She gestured to the envelope. That's when I found all of this. And confronted him? He said it was all in the past, that those other women didn't mean anything, that I was different, that we could build something real together once the divorce was final. But there was no divorce. There was never going to be a divorce. He was never going to leave you, Alina. You were his safety net. The rest of us were just entertainment. We sat in silence for a moment, both processing the scope of Marcus's deception. I kicked him out 3 days ago, Jessica said finally. Where is he now? I don't know, and I don't care. I believed her. The anger in her voice was too raw to be fake. Why bring this to me? I asked. You could have just walked away. Because you deserve to know the truth. All of it. And because, she hesitated, because I need you to know that if I had known, really known, what kind of man he was, I never would have gotten involved. I believe you. You do? Jessica, you're not the villain in this story. Neither am I. Marcus is. He's the one who lied to everyone, who manipulated everyone, who used everyone. She nodded, tears starting to fall. I feel so stupid. Don't. He's had years of practice at this. We never stood a chance. What are you going to do with all this? She gestured to the documents. I looked at the evidence of my husband's systematic betrayal. Years of lies, multiple affairs, financial fraud, a pattern of behavior that went far beyond one mistake or moment of weakness. I'm going to make sure he can't do this to anyone else. What do you mean? I mean, Marcus has been getting away with this because his victims don't know about each other. But now we do. 3 hours later, I had contact information for Sarah Martinez and Kim Thompson. Jessica had agreed to help me reach out to them, to share what we'd discovered. Sarah answered on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting for this call her entire life. You're Marcus's wife, she said before I could introduce myself. You know about me? I figured it out eventually. When he suddenly stopped calling last year, I did some research, found your social media, saw the photos of you two together at company events. But you never said anything. What was I supposed to say? I was the other woman. I was ashamed. You were lied to. There's a difference. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Is this about revenge? This is about justice. There's a difference there too. Kim Thompson was harder to reach, but when Jessica finally got her on the phone, her story was depressingly familiar. Same lies, same manipulation, same sudden disappearance when Marcus got bored or nervous. He's still doing this? Kim asked when we explained about Jessica. He was, I said, until recently. What stopped him? His wife found out. You? Me. We arranged to meet the following Saturday at my house. 4 women who'd been manipulated by the same man, comparing notes and deciding what to do next. They arrived within minutes of each other. Sarah in a red Prius, Kim in a black pickup truck, Jessica in the blue Honda I'd seen in Marcus's photos. We sat on my back patio, surrounded by the garden that had become my sanctuary. This feels surreal, Sarah said, looking around at our small group. Which part? Kim asked. Meeting the other women, or realizing we all fell for the same lies? Both. I served coffee and pastries from Daniel's restaurant, playing hostess to a support group I'd never imagined needing. I keep thinking I should have known, Jessica said. There were so many red flags. Like what? I asked. He never wanted me to meet his friends. Said they were all coupled up and wouldn't understand our situation. He never invited me to work events. Always had an excuse for why I couldn't come to his place. Because his place was my place, I said. He did the same thing to me, Sarah added. Always my apartment, never his. Always weekend afternoons, never evenings or overnight. Same here, Kim confirmed. I thought he was just being respectful of my space. Now I realize he was managing his schedule. How long were each of your relationships? I asked. Sarah counted on her fingers. About 4 months. 6 months for me, Kim said. 5 months, Jessica added. So he cycles through every 4 to 6 months. Probably whenever things start getting serious, Sarah said. Or whenever we start asking questions he can't answer. What kind of questions? Meeting his family. Talking about the future. Normal relationship progression stuff. I thought about my own marriage, how Marcus had always deflected conversations about having children, or buying a bigger house, or making long-term plans. I'd assumed he was just cautious. Now I wondered if he was just keeping his options open. Ladies, I said, refilling everyone's coffee, I have a proposition. They looked at me expectantly. Marcus has been getting away with this for years because we've all been isolated, ashamed, afraid to speak up, but we're not isolated anymore. What are you suggesting? Kim asked. I'm suggesting we make sure everyone knows exactly who Marcus Rosewood is. Like publicly? Sarah asked. Very publicly. Jessica looked nervous. Elena, that could backfire, make us all look vindictive. Could it? Or would it look like public service? I pulled out my laptop and showed them what I'd been working on all week. A detailed blog post documenting Marcus's pattern of behavior, complete with screenshots, receipts, and testimony from all 4 of us. You want to publish this? Kim asked, scrolling through the document. I want to make sure that when women Google Marcus Rosewood, they find this instead of his professional headshots. That's actually brilliant, Sarah said. It's not revenge, I continued. It's prevention. How many other women are out there right now, being fed the same lies we all believed? And what about his career? Jessica asked. What about it? He committed expense fraud, conducted multiple workplace affairs, and lied to clients about his personal life. His career deserved to be over. Kim was still reading through the blog post. This is thorough. You've documented everything. I believe in being thorough. So do I. She looked up at me. What do you need from us? Permission to use your stories, and maybe your help spreading the word once it's published. Sarah nodded immediately. I'm in. I should have done something like this when I figured out he was married. I'm in too, Kim said, but I want to add something. What? I want to include information about financial abuse. He borrowed money from me too. Said it was for lawyer fees for his divorce. How much? $3,000. Money I'm never getting back. Jessica paled. He borrowed $5,000 from me. We all looked at Sarah, who sighed heavily. $2,000. Also for lawyer fees. $10,000 stolen from 3 women, on top of whatever he'd taken from our joint accounts for his affairs. The scope of his deception kept growing. That settles it, I said. This isn't just about infidelity anymore. This is about a pattern of financial and emotional abuse. I published the blog post that Sunday evening after running it past a lawyer friend who confirmed we were protected by truth in publishing laws. Within hours, it had been shared dozens of times. By Monday morning, it was trending on several social media platforms. The responses were overwhelmingly supportive. Women sharing their own stories of similar men, expressions of solidarity and admiration for our courage in speaking out. But the response that mattered most came Tuesday morning, in the form of a text from a number I didn't recognize. "My name is Amanda Chen, Jessica's cousin. I've been dating Marcus for 3 weeks. He told me he was divorced. Thank you for posting this. I'm ending it today." Then another. "This is Monica Wright. I work at Marcus's new company. He asked me out yesterday. Your blog post just saved me from making a huge mistake." And another. "I'm Marcus's neighbor. I've been wondering why different women keep showing up at his apartment at different times. Now I know. Sharing this with my single friends." By Thursday, I'd received over 50 messages from women who'd either dated Marcus or narrowly avoided dating him. The blog post had become a community resource, a warning system that was actually working. Marcus, meanwhile, had gone silent. No angry calls, no threatening texts, no attempts to defend himself. Just radio silence, which was somehow more satisfying than any confrontation would have been. Daniel found me in my garden that Friday evening, pruning roses in the golden hour light. "How are you feeling?" he asked, settling onto the wooden bench I'd placed among the peonies. "Lighter," I said honestly. "Like I've been carrying around this secret shame for months, and now it's gone. Any regrets about going public?" "None. The only regret I have is not doing it sooner." "And Marcus? Have you heard from him?" "Not directly, but Jessica heard from a mutual friend that he's moved back in with his parents in Ohio. Running home to mommy? Running away from the consequences of his actions. Again." Daniel was quiet for a moment, watching me work. "You know what I admire most about how you handled all this?" "What?" "You didn't just get revenge. You got justice. There's a difference." Someone else said that to me recently. Smart person. I set down my pruning shears and looked at him. Really looked at him. Daniel Martinez, who'd been patient and supportive and honest through all of this chaos, who'd never made me feel like I was damaged goods or too complicated or not worth the effort. "Daniel?" "Yeah? Yeah? I think I'm ready to stop defining myself by what Marcus did to me." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm ready to figure out who Elena Rosewood is when she's not trying to fix someone else's damage." "And what have you figured out so far?" I looked around my garden, at the house I'd turned into a sanctuary, at the life I was building on my own terms, that she's stronger than she thought, braver than she knew, and worth a lot more than she ever believed. Daniel smiled. "I could have told you that months ago. I wouldn't have believed you months ago. And now? Now I'm starting to believe it myself." That night, I updated the blog post with a final entry. It's been 2 weeks since I published this story, and the response has been overwhelming. Hundreds of women have reached out to share their own experiences with Marcus, with men like Marcus, and with the process of rebuilding after betrayal. What I've learned is that this was never really about Marcus. It was about refusing to be silently complicit in my own mistreatment. It was about choosing truth over comfort, justice over peace, and self-respect over social expectations. Marcus thought I was almost pathetic. He was wrong. There's nothing pathetic about trusting someone you love. There's nothing pathetic about believing in the promises people make. There's nothing pathetic about having integrity in a world that often rewards deception. What's pathetic is being a man in your 30s who lies to multiple women simultaneously because you're too cowardly to live an honest life. To the women who've shared their stories with me, you are not stupid. You are not naive. You are not responsible for other people's choices to deceive you. You deserve partners who choose you every day, not partners who keep you as backup plans. To Marcus, if you're reading this, I hope you get the help you need to become the kind of person who doesn't need to lie to feel worthy of love. But more than that, I hope you stay far away from women until you do. And to my future self, if she ever doubts her worth again, remember this moment. Remember how it felt to choose yourself. Remember that you are never, ever pathetic for demanding the truth. The open marriage is officially closed, but my new life, that's just beginning. 6 months later, I was featured in a national magazine article about women who'd turned personal betrayal into public advocacy. The blog post had evolved into a resource website for victims of relationship fraud, complete with legal resources and support groups. Daniel and I had moved in together, into a new house, one with no memories of Marcus and plenty of room for new ones. He'd proposed on the anniversary of my divorce being finalized, in the middle of my new garden, surrounded by white peonies. I'd said yes, obviously, but more importantly, I'd said yes as a woman who knew her own worth, who wouldn't accept lies or manipulation or being someone's second choice ever again. Marcus, according to my sources, was still living with his parents, still unemployed, still single, as far as anyone could tell. The women he'd hurt had all moved on to better things. Sarah had started her own real estate agency. Kim had gone back to school for nurse practitioner training. Jessica had taken a job with a nonprofit fighting financial fraud. We'd all survived Marcus Rosewood. More than that, we'd thrived. Because here's what Marcus never understood. When you try to destroy someone who refuses to stay broken, you don't create a victim. You create a warrior. And warriors don't just survive, they conquer.